It is evening in a suburban home outside Houston. A delivery truck has just left, and a large box is by the door. When the family opens it, they find a product made in another country. The father takes an item out of the box and puts it on the table. The mother checks the new set of plates, smooth and polished, but they too have crossed an ocean. Even the phone resting on the table, the one used to order groceries and call relatives, was built far away. For decades, these same objects would have been produced in American towns filled with factories and workers. Today, families live surrounded by goods that arrive from ports thousands of miles away. Every receipt, every monthly bill, every online order carries the hidden cost of this distance. To change this, the previous administration promised a new path. America would once again be a nation of factories, and tariffs on imported goods would help bring jobs back home. The idea sounded straightforward. If foreign products became more expensive, American companies would rebuild inside the United States. The Trump administration introduced a wave of new tariffs aimed at reviving American manufacturing and reducing reliance on foreign goods. Those measures remain in place today, shaping trade and supply chains across the country. But the reality has grown far more complicated than the promise. Costs have risen, companies have struggled to adapt, and families continue to ask the same question. Can tariffs alone bring back what was lost? Or is the return of American manufacturing a challenge far beyond a single policy? To understand this, we must first look back at what was once the foundation of American life. It is the middle of the 20th century, and the United States is known as the workshop of the world. In Detroit, smokestacks rise into the sky as endless lines of cars roll off assembly belts. Each shift brings thousands of vehicles onto American roads, carrying not only steel and rubber, but also pride and domestic strength. In Pittsburgh, the glow of furnaces lights the night as molten steel pours out in streams, cooling into beams that will build bridges and skyscrapers. Across Ohio, Illinois, and New York, factories hum with the sound of production, pressing sheet metal, sewing garments, and assembling household goods. By the late 1950s, more than 1 in 5 American workers is employed in manufacturing. Nearly 20 million people earn their living in plants that supply not just wages, but security, health benefits, and pensions. For many, the factory is not just a workplace, it is a symbol of the American dream itself. A steady job meant a house in the suburbs, a car in the driveway, and a belief that children would grow up with even greater opportunities. Factories were more than buildings of brick and steel. They were the center of communities, the rhythm of neighborhoods, and the foundation of a national identity built on production and progress. But this proud vision was not to last forever. The world was about to change, and the glow of those furnaces would begin to fade. By the 1980s, the shift was undeniable. In Cleveland, auto plants once filled with thousands of workers now stood locked and silent. In Pennsylvania, the glow of steel furnaces faded, leaving behind rusted shells and empty warehouses. Whole towns across the Midwest and Northeast began to lose people as families packed up and left in search of work. What had once been the industrial heartland of America came to be called by a new name, the Rust Belt. The reasons ran deeper than aging machinery or local mismanagement. Global trade was reshaping the map of production. In 1994, the North American Free Trade Agreement opened new opportunities for companies to move operations to Mexico, where wages were lower and regulations lighter. Then in 2001, China entered the World Trade Organization, giving global firms access to the world's largest pool of low-cost labor and rapidly growing industrial hubs. Factories that had stood for generations in Buffalo, Detroit, or Youngstown were dismantled and rebuilt in Guangdong or Monterrey. For the communities left behind, the consequences were devastating. Jobs vanished, main streets emptied, and schools closed. The name Rust Belt did not only describe corroded steel beams, it symbolized faded opportunity and broken expectations. So the question remains, why did companies feel they had no choice but to leave the very towns that once defined American prosperity? One reason was written in every paycheck. By the 1990s, an American factory worker earned on average about $11 an hour in wages, roughly $15 to $20 when benefits were included. Across the ocean, in China, the same hour of labor cost less than $1, and in Vietnam it was even lower, around $0.3 to $0.5. The gap was vast, and every calculation on a corporate balance sheet pointed in the same direction. Inside the United States, factory owners faced mounting expenses. Wages, healthcare, pensions, and safety regulations piled onto the cost of every product. In Ohio, a manager could walk through an assembly line and see machines standing still because orders were too expensive to fill locally. Meanwhile, in Guangdong or Hanoi, the same type of assembly line moved quickly, filled with younger workers, conveyor belts running at full speed, and shipments leaving for ports each night. The contrast was impossible to ignore. For families, this difference showed up at the checkout counter. A microwave made in the United States might be priced at $120. The same appliance produced overseas appeared on shelves for $60. A pair of sneakers made in Michigan could cost twice as much as those made in Asia. When faced with such choices, most households turned to the cheaper option. Step by step, consumer behavior reinforced the corporate logic. Labor cost was not just an abstract number in a report. It was the deciding factor in whether a company could compete, survive, or disappear. But the difference in wages was not the only challenge. Even when companies wanted to stay, another barrier awaited them. Factories are not islands. They rely on hundreds of smaller businesses that provide the nuts, bolts, wires, and sheets of steel needed to keep production moving. By the late 1990s, many of those suppliers had already disappeared from the United States. Picture a plant manager walking through an empty warehouse in Ohio. The machines are ready, workers are available, yet one essential part is missing. A chain link that connects the engine or a microchip that powers the circuit no longer made anywhere nearby. The only option is to order it from overseas, wait months for delivery, and hope the shipment clears the port on time. At the docks of Los Angeles and Long Beach, mountains of containers became the lifeline of American factories. Each box carried pieces of a larger puzzle, from screws forged in Taiwan to specialized glass from South Korea. Without these imports, many assembly lines inside the United States could not even begin to run. This was the hidden cost of decades of offshoring. While consumer goods became cheaper, the ecosystem of local suppliers collapsed. And once that web of small manufacturers disappeared, rebuilding it was not as simple as flipping a switch. It required skills, machines, and investment that had slowly migrated to other continents. The absence of supply chains turned every new factory plan into a gamble. Even if companies wanted to bring jobs back, they were forced to ask a difficult question. Could they actually operate without the network of parts and materials that once surrounded them? This reality made clear that cost differences were only part of the story. The deeper challenge lay in the missing foundation itself. And yet, supply chains were not the final hurdle. There was still another factor that made rebuilding American manufacturing even more difficult. Factories in the United States operate under some of the strictest environmental standards in the world. Before a new facility can rise, it must pass layers of inspections, permits, and compliance tests. Water treatment systems are installed. Filters line the smokestacks. Every gallon of waste and every spark of emission is carefully monitored. Picture a modern steel mill in Indiana. Outside its walls, the sky is clear, the air feels light, and a river nearby runs clean. The hum of machines is softened by the knowledge that toxic smoke will not spill into neighborhoods. This is a reality built from decades of reform. Half a century ago, scenes were very different. In the 1970s, smog covered the skylines of industrial cities, and rivers like the Cuyahoga in Ohio caught fire from pollution. Outrage over those conditions led to new laws, and the Environmental Protection Agency became a powerful force. The legacy of those choices is visible today, but so is the cost. By comparison, many factories in China and parts of Southeast Asia do not face the same restrictions. Coal furnaces run longer, chemical waste is discharged with fewer checks, and entire regions absorb the burden. For companies looking only at balance sheets, the difference is stark. Producing the same product in the United States can be far more expensive, not because of labor or parts, but because of the price of keeping the air and water clean. This created a paradox. American society demanded cleaner cities and safer communities, but those very protections made domestic manufacturing less competitive. Cheaper goods from abroad filled store shelves, while many local plants remained shuttered. It was a reminder that the obstacles to rebuilding manufacturing were not only economic, they were also the result of choices about health, safety, and the kind of future people wanted to live in. Yet even these regulations could not explain the full story. Another powerful force was changing manufacturing everywhere, in America and beyond. That other force was not only within America's borders. It was also the strategies of nations competing across the globe. In China, the scale is overwhelming. Factories stretch for miles, entire cities built around production zones. Conveyor belts carry electronics day and night, while container trucks queue at ports that never sleep. Behind this growth lies a flood of state support. In 2019 alone, China directed an estimated $248 billion toward industrial subsidies. That investment fueled not only textiles and consumer goods, but also advanced sectors like semiconductors and renewable energy. The result is a manufacturing base that dwarfs every other nation, a machine of scale and momentum that few can rival. Across the Atlantic, Europe moved first. Years before the United States launched its own subsidies, European leaders urged companies to bring factories back from Asia. New plants were announced in Germany, France, and Eastern Europe, symbolizing the hope of an industrial revival. But the reality was harsher. Energy crises sent the cost of powering furnaces soaring. Strict environmental laws added layers of expense. Many of those celebrated projects never reached full capacity, and some closed within years. What began as a bold experiment turned into a cautionary tale. For Europe, the attempt showed that good intentions and early action were not enough. Without affordable energy and competitive costs, even well-funded factories struggled to survive. In the United States, the response came later. Recent laws such as the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act have poured billions into new plants. But those measures focus on specific areas, like semiconductors, batteries, and green technology. They are driven by national security and climate goals, not by a broad revival of every factory town. For workers in industries outside those sectors, the promise of new jobs often remains distant. These contrasts reveal a truth. China's manufacturing surge is anchored in heavy state support. Europe's early attempts stumbled under the weight of energy and regulation. America's revival efforts are selective and strategic, but their results remain limited. Each region follows its own path, yet none offers an easy model to follow. This shows that policy alone cannot resolve the challenge. Behind every subsidy and regulation lies a deeper question. Even if governments spend billions, can they overcome forces that have been reshaping manufacturing for decades? The answer was not so simple. For there was automation, a quiet transformation that had been reshaping factories for decades. Step into a modern factory in Michigan. The floor is vast, the ceiling high, yet the noise that once defined industrial life is gone. Instead of hundreds of voices and the clang of metal tools, there is a steady hum. Robotic arms swing with flawless rhythm, welding steel, stacking components, and moving with precision that never tires. On one side, technicians sit in small control rooms, watching screens filled with data instead of standing at assembly lines. This was not an overnight change. By the 1980s, computers and industrial robots had begun to replace human labor in subtle ways. Tasks once performed by dozens of skilled workers were encoded into machines. The pace of production quickened, output soared, and costs fell. But for the families whose livelihoods depended on those jobs, the gains never reached their kitchen tables. Their work was replaced not by cheaper countries, but by machines that never asked for rest. Think back to the mid-20th century. An automobile plant meant rows of men and women tightening bolts, painting frames, and fitting doors. The air was filled with shouting, laughter, and the metallic echo of tools. Each paycheck represented stability, a mortgage payment, groceries for the week, or a child's college tuition. By the early 2000s, that sound had faded. Motors and circuits replaced it, leaving factory floors that felt emptier even as production numbers climbed higher than ever. For many towns, this created a painful paradox. Even if a factory returned, it no longer promised thousands of jobs. Instead, machines carried much of the workload, leaving only a fraction of positions for specialized technicians. This is the silent truth behind the decline of manufacturing employment. Global trade and outsourcing shaped the story, but so did technology. The very efficiency that made goods cheaper also made human labor less central. And here, opinions divide. In Washington conference rooms, microphones rest on long tables as policymakers debate what must be done. Some voices rise with urgency, arguing that strategic industries must remain at home. They insist that tariffs and subsidies are not optional but essential, a shield against the risk of dependence on foreign supply. To them, keeping production inside the country is about more than economics. It is about security, stability, and the survival of skills that once defined national strength. One economist compares it to insurance. You pay the cost every day, even when nothing goes wrong, because when disaster strikes, it may be the only thing that saves you. But in other halls, the mood is different. Scholars present slides filled with charts showing the steady rise of services in America's economy. They point to finance, healthcare, and technology as the engines of growth, not steel or cars. For them, the dream of a manufacturing renaissance is unrealistic. They say the United States has already moved past the old model, and trying to rebuild it is like chasing a shadow. Factories may still exist, but they will never again be the core of employment or prosperity. This divide leaves ordinary citizens caught in the middle. At town halls across the country, workers listen as experts clash over abstract numbers and policies. Yet what they want is simple: a stable job, a wage that keeps up with the cost of living, and the hope that their children will have better opportunities. In these moments, the debate feels less like theory and more like a question of daily survival. And so the uncertainty lingers. If some say protection is the key, and others say the past cannot be revived, what path remains open? The answer may depend on how America defines prosperity in the years ahead. In grocery aisles, shoppers still pause at rising prices, weighing each item before placing it in their carts. At gas stations, drivers glance at the board above the pump, wondering why their weekly routines now cost so much more. In offices and workshops, younger generations look at career choices and ask whether stable, lifelong employment is even possible anymore. These small moments capture the larger truth. The debate over manufacturing is not only about trade policy or subsidies. It is about the everyday cost of living, the stability of jobs, and the kind of economy that future families will inherit. Some industries may continue to grow at home. Semiconductor plants break ground with billions in investment. Battery factories rise in the Midwest, promising to power the next wave of electric vehicles. Yet even as these facilities open, they are different from the old factories that once employed tens of thousands. Fewer workers walk through their gates, and more of the labor is carried out by machines. The promise of a broad manufacturing renaissance may remain out of reach, but that does not mean the story is over. The real challenge is not whether every factory returns, but whether a new balance can be found between technology, trade, and the needs of society. Across the nation, new initiatives are underway. From semiconductor plants breaking ground to programs training a new generation of workers, America is searching for ways to adapt. The outcome is uncertain, yet each step reflects a determination to shape a future of prosperity that fits a changing world.